Before the discovery of Australia, there was a belief that all swans were white. Since statistically proven until then, all swans were white. Now, the first sighting of the black swan might have been an interesting fact, yet Nassim Taleb uses that story to prove something far more significant. That one single event, one single discovery could disprove the entire course of human understanding and history itself. Greetings, honorable judges, fellow debate. Greetings, honorable judges, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, today in the auditorium. My name is not as important as the truth I'm presenting today. So without further ado, let's get started with my presentation on the book, The Black Swan. Now, firstly, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear intellectuals, let me ask you one simple question. How many books have you bought without ever reading them, letting them pile up at the back of your house? Now, the answer might be countless. Most of the times I would argue that you're just simply lazy. Yet, Nassim Taleb uses this illustration to argue something, that in the pages of the untold, there lies something far more important. The things that are not the unknown is something that bears many weight, that bears a lot of weight because the unknown bears a lot of weight because in that it holds the value of what could change the entire course of history, the black swan that is yet to come. Now, take a look at this graph. This is the graph of the distribution of household wealth over the last 50 years in the US. As you can see, the top 10% occupies 2/3 of the entire nation's wealth. To put it more simply, this single dot here occupies most of the USA's wealth. This is what Nassim Taleb calls the extremism, the idea that some things are so disproportionately concentrated that one single effect of it could change the entire course of human understanding. Now, history is a mechanical contraption that within it there are some rare malfunctions, but yet those malfunctions impact history so much that we remember it till today. Some things could be like the Black Tuesday, an economic stock market crash in 1929, or the rise of Hitler, or even most recently, COVID-19. Now, with that in mind, we need to understand that the black swan is an unpredictable event that also bears a major impact on history, also characterized by the retrospective distortion that comes afterward. Now, the question must be asked, why does humanity keep falling into the same traps of the black swan? And with that, I'd like to introduce you to the concept of the episteme by Michel Foucault. Now, the episteme, as Michel Foucault would put it, is the grammar of thought that defines what ought to be true, the perspectives that give rise to truth in that period and era of history itself. Truth and knowledge is something that is structured through conditions, and it is reinvented days by days, not only rigid, not something defined to eternity. With that, I'd like to show you how the episteme has been displaying itself through the eras of history through art. Firstly, the Renaissance. With paintings such as the Primavera, School of Athens, or even the Vitruvian Man, we must know that this era is highly characterized by the religious impacts and religious beliefs that this era carries. For example, you could see in the Vitruvian Man by Leonardo da Vinci, the man is shaped in a perfect circle, embodying the shapes of the planets that we believe are circles. Or even in the Primavera, set in a very natural backdrop, as the idea of religious or divine creation of the humans on Earth. Moving on, a bit further down the line, we could see in the neoclassical era with thinkers such as René Descartes or Blaise Pascal. This era is characterized by order, taxonomies. We could see in the geometries of the Palace of Versailles how it is order, or in the painting The Geographer. This is the era of science and order. And a bit later down, in the early modern era with thinkers such as Carl Jung or Karl Marx, the subject of study turns inward, and now humans are the subject of studies with, for example, with fields of study such as psychology, labor, or behavioral economics. Now, with that in mind, we already know that the episteme is what gives rise to truth and what gives what creates the perspectives that defines truth. With that, I'd like to introduce you to section 2 of my presentation, once beloved sandcastles. Ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this sequence of number. Give it a few seconds, let it marinate. Now how about this one? Now, would you be surprised to think that both of these sequences of number have nothing related, have nothing in order? They are both completely randomly generated by an AI. That gives the point that truth is like sand dunes. They are created by the wind. 10 years ago, they might look different. 10 years later, they might also look different. Most of the time, sand dunes are completely random, created by the winds that we cannot trace their origins. Yet, we all find one pattern within it because our mind imposes something onto randomness to rationalize what is not there. For example, in history, scientists like Galileo Galilei, before his time, people believed that the Earth is at the center of the universe. Yet after him, like another gust of wind, Galileo Galilei created the idea of the Earth revolving around the sun. So similarly, 10 years, 100 years later, these ideas could also change. Down the river of time, truth is reinventing itself day by day, not something that is stuck eternally. Now, let's come back to Taleb. So most of the times when you're seeing something, or people are telling you you're seeing something, you're truthfully seeing nothing. Now let's come back to Taleb. We have to understand the episteme of the postmodern era, or how has the postmodern era influenced and gives rise to the perspectives of truth right now. So if you could remember, I explained that COVID-19 was a black swan that happened quite recently. So if you could recall, millions of papers and newspapers have written about misinformation on vaccine safety, and this has spread at an astonishing speed. An MIT study showed that fake news spread 85% faster than truthful news. This is because, as I've mentioned before with the sand dunes, we impose our own interpretations onto randomness in order to rationalize and make it logical what we think is true. With that, there is one question: why do some, amidst all the chaos, some could persist, some could prevent themselves from being vulnerable by them? The answer lies in these two graphs. The first one shows the human attention span and screen focus over the last 30 years overall in the entire capita. The second one, however, shows the wealth by wealth percentile group, or the wealth disparity within the last 20 years in the US. Now, if I put them side by side like this, you might not see what is there. Yet, if I overlay them, in fact, you can see that they exactly mirror each other. In fact, those two graphs have been descending and rising at almost the same rate, just inversely. As you can see, the reason is because why the poor gets poorer is because the poor, they allow themselves to indulge in these social medias, the newspaper, and they get in this information, these types of misinformation that allow them to be vulnerable to black swan, while the rich get richer because they know how to escape from the loops of social media and newspaper. They stay adogmatic, is what Nassim Taleb would say. They use their own thinking, they create the critical analysis that helps them analyze what is true and what is not. But the most important thing about being adogmatic is not refusing knowledge. You are simply refusing the state of knowing something. Certainty is the greatest enemy of knowledge because it keeps you static, it keeps you rigid, it keeps you unmoving in the forever moving river of life. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, last time we have failed with COVID-19. So perhaps tomorrow World War III would happen, who would know? But I would hope that we are able to prevent whatever there is coming by keeping an attitude of growing and open-mindedness that is necessary for us to stay moving. So perhaps this is the oldest tragedy of human civilizations. We have more information ever and ever as we grow with technologies and stuffs. Yet, like Icarus, as he falls, he smiles, thinking that he has conquered the sky and waves the clouds. And as civilizations crumbled, thinking that they have mastered knowledge itself, they finally took their own last breath due to their ignorance or arrogance. Thank you.